Before starting the event, we have some precautions, so please listen for a while. First, today we have the large number of applications, more than we expected. So we changed meeting style to webinar style. We are sorry about that. If you have some questions or impressions, please send a message to the chat. We don't want to get you out of the room, but if you send an irrelevant message to the topics, we have to. So please cooperate so that everyone enjoy this event. Thank you for your cooperation. では、トムさん、please start the guest talk. Maybe my mic is off.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, so thank you everyone for attending this webinar event. And so today, because we've got 100, I think there's 190 people who have applied to be part of this webinar. So there's going to be quite a lot of questions. When you want to ask a question, please use the chat box at the bottom. And then during the question time as well, if you want to actually ask the question live, you can raise your hand and then the administrator will allow you to hello. Yeah, just ask the question directly. So yeah, so that's how we're going to do it today. So today I'm joined by Van. I should be joined by Thomas soon, hopefully. Oh yeah, there we go. And yeah, so today's topic is about kind of sustainability and kind of going for new challenges in the Japanese countryside. In this case, it's Hiroshima Prefecture. And at the beginning, actually, the prefecture would really appreciate it if you can fill out this quick poll. So if we can have that poll, yeah. So if you just take a few moments now just to just click through those, that'll be really, really helpful. Okay. And the order of the day, so we're going to have a quick presentation from Thomas, Van and myself, just to kind of give you a background on how we ended up living here. And then we were going to have a crosstalk session, but we're just going to open it up for questions straight away, just because there's so many participants. And so while you're listening to everyone's talks, you can just be putting your questions into the chat and then we'll get around to them after the presentations. Okay. Is that okay? So, all right. So should we start first with Thomas? Do you want to start your presentation?
Hello, my name's Thomas Klepfer. I'm from Athens, Georgia in the United States. And in 2008, I attended Appalachian State University and studied sustainable development, particularly sustainable agriculture. And at that time, I was required to choose a language course. I chose Japanese. And in the initial stages of my sustainable development, sustainable ag degree, we read one book called The One Straw Revolution by Fukuoka Masanobu. And that was a big inspiration for me to learn about Japanese farming and to come to Japan. In 2010, I was an intern in Nagano, did woofing and had about a 10-week opportunity to see Japan, visit the countryside, visit the beautiful natural places like the Northern Alps and the Southern Alps. And that is kind of what brought me back to Japan. I applied for the JET program in 2011 and was accepted, and I came in 2011. And I originally intended to go or applied to go to Hokkaido or Shikoku because I really wanted to see more wild places. I ended up in Onomichi in Hiroshima. and I was really, at first, if you search Onomichi, you really didn't get much information. I think nowadays it's really become a very popular spot for sightseeing and tourism. And the Shimanami Kaido and cycling course here was a great thing to initially enjoy when I was an English teacher for the first 2 years in Japan. During that time, though, when I was cycling, I saw a lot of farmland, and it looked to be a lot of abandoned farmland. And I got a chance to rent a small plot as a jet, uh, and I continued that plot, and actually I have continued that plot until today, and I currently live there. In 2013, I left the JET program and I joined a beer company in Shizuoka Prefecture, a small craft beer company, as their sustainability director, but it was more of a glorified groundskeeper position, a lot of weed whacking and grass cutting and some farming, but not as much as I intended. So I left there and I returned back to Onomichi and back to Makaishima, where I currently live, and started this farm, which is now Pitchfork Farms. But as a teacher, I had some good income, I think. But then coming back and wanting to start a farm and start a farm on my own with very little capital and very little, and the need to kind of build up my tools and experience and customer base. I wasn't able to do full-time farming, so I joined a graduate school program at Hiroshima University called the Taiyaka program in 2015, and should have maybe graduated this past year, but I'm gonna continue on, and it should be around my 6th year in a dual master's PhD program. So this is Makaishima, this is where I live. It's a really great island to live on. It's got quite a large population, but it's relatively close to Onomichi, which is the main town. And this is our farm. It's an east-facing farm, and overlooks the sea, and it was an abandoned farm when we first started. And when I first started, I used goats and initially to eat all the grasses and the weeds and take back what was an abandoned farm. And when I studied sustainable agriculture, they don't really teach you how to grow anything. And so I met with neighbors and was able to learn to grow some of my first crops on my own. And this is an example of one of the salads that I grew when I first came to Japan as a teacher. But the more and more I learned about Japan and agriculture, I saw a lot of issues, and one is farmland abandonment. The other issue is the age gap right now. Farmers, I think in many developing countries, are relatively young, but in more developed countries like Japan or in America, the average age is about 60 to 65. And I think in Japan it's even higher. And in this region, the Chuhoku Chiho, or this area where Hiroshima is in, it's even higher and has a very little number of young farmers. And another big thing when it comes to sustainable development and sustainable agriculture is looking at increasing organic farm production, where Japan is one of the lower ranking organic farm producing nations. My farming philosophy really stems from Fukuoka Masanobu, Sir Albert Howard, and his ideas on soil and soil health. And we have become an organic and a no-till and also a natural farm in many senses. And we really look at the soil health and biodiversity. And then our farm philosophy and our lifestyle here embodies this idea that in Japan of ishokuju, or clothing, food, and shelter. I, along with my wife, she runs a textile company on the island, and we try to bring these ideas and how these ideas together and try to create a really regenerative system for our life and lifestyle here. So the Pitchfork Farms is a homestead and also what I would consider a farmstead, where we're able to grow on a lot of what we consume. And we also sell it in a market garden. We also sell online now. Many of the markets shut down in the last year, and many of the restaurants that we weren't once sold to have, reduced their business. So we've really focused to selling online, either through our website or platforms like Tabechoku. And we're also looking at moving towards being a more off-grid farm. So the well water that we use on the farm is our only water source, and we really maintain and try to make sure to keep it under good condition. And we also look at including solar and solar power with off-grid hot water, and also small electronic appliances using solar power. And in terms of no waste, we're of course slowly moving towards that, but of course as a household we still produce a lot of waste, and we're thinking of ways we can reduce that. And in one way on the farm is reducing the amount of maybe plastic we use on the field, and any of the vegetable waste go directly to some of our favorite customers, which happen to be our sheep. So farm to table is one of the other concepts we're really trying to develop more and more. And this is where all the food we're growing, really we try to bring it to our customers' table, which is why we moved away from restaurants, and we're looking more at direct to customer sales. And so our recommendations from our farm, especially recommendations for the audience, is, there's so many business opportunities in rural Japan, maybe including some of these of the sustainable development goals. I know they become key kind of buzzwords these days, but they're looking deeply at each one of them. They do provide some significance and some importance, and maybe we do have a role to play. And farms, for example, can maybe cover 4 or 5 of these goals, if not all 17. I think it's possible. And our hope and ambitions for the future is just to continue growing our small farm business, looking at how we can maybe bring in groups to the farm, children, do the education tours and workshops in the future, and maybe continue to grow our customer base. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Thomas. So let's just go straight on. So Van, would you like to do your presentation?
Yeah, okay, I'm unmuted. So yes, can we start the great tsuchi, which means earth in Japanese. So actually it's one of my main interests, I would say, as a plasterer. And so can we move to the next slide, please? Yes, so I'm Van. I'm born in '86. I've got a few masters in the 2010s, and I left my PhD in Hiroshima University. And I met a plasterer, which was quite interesting. And he asked me if I wanted to start to work with a baito as a small job with him. So I just started plastering with him, and then I got more into plastering and less into my studies, and that's how I came to live on the island like this. So and now I'm building my own house on the island called Osaki Kamijima, which is close to Mukaijima and also Osaki Shimojima, which is Tom and Thomas Islands. So yes, I'm also working as a professional plasterer. So this is the island. So yes, well, there is a 5 ferry, many access to the island. It's quite close to Hiroshima Airport. It's not so far from Hiroshima City, but well, it's not close either. Can we go to the next slide? Yes, so this is my house. From the view from another house I made a little bit before, made from pallets and different other materials. Anyway, it's so can we go to the next slide? So yes, so why did I choose this place? I chose this place to live because of the view. I could see the sea. It's also a temperate climate. If you want to do farming, I thought it would have been better like to have a temperate climate, not too warm or not too cold. It's also very cheap. Like for example, like I'm not owner of the land, but have a rent which is about 1,000 yen per month, so which is nothing in a year. Also, the price of my house, I calculated it's around, I don't know, if you live in an urban area, it would be, if you pay like Hachiman yen per rent for 1 month, maybe in less than 10 years, you can build my house. So also, like, it's actually quite convenient place. There is no combini, but there is like 2 supermarkets, 1 tool store, no, a home center, you say maybe. And so, yeah. Also, it's a quite international place because there is the international Eichi Gakuen, which is a middle school and high school speaking only English. There is also like a few other schools on the island, and there is many foreigners who have been coming to the island because of the history of the island. It's a quite long story, so I will just pass this for now. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yes. So I'm mostly doing plastering jobs, and I'm earning basically my life with my plastering jobs, but also doing some side jobs, like for example, like tourism model, like playing the foreigners, you know, and for flyers, and also like translation jobs. Oh yes, I forgot to mention it, but I'm from France, so you can guess with my accent maybe. I'm also mainly building my house and raising my kids, and also splitting wood, a lot of wood, because I have to warm my house in the winter with firewood. And also I like to drink coffee and cognac after the rest of the time. So maybe you can join me one day. And this is a picture of me and my son, like walking on the earthen floor. And also, so this is basically like one side of my plastering job. I have many photos and stuff, and it's, we can talk a lot about it later maybe, but also I like to, in my job, as a traditional plasterer, I'm trying to use the ancient techniques, like, and also materials, so basically earth, and recycling, like for example, the old Japanese tile used for the roof, like to use them for making a wall, for example. And yeah, well, I'm doing this kind of job. So can we, this is the other slide. Yes, this is the, for example, like a decorative, like this is called the kote-e, which is like kind of a travel drawing using lime, and it's a kind of a sunflower with a small rabbit. And the other side is like I'm using like earth for making a polished earth floor, and it is quite comfortable to walk on. So yeah, this is different kind of thing I do with my job, which is well, I always try to use most of the time, and also educate around me the people who, for using more, well, sustainable materials, which is, I think, for me in my job, is like more using more earth and straw and yeah, materials such as these kind of things. Yes. Well, that's basically it. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Van. Okay, so I'll just quickly go over my presentation and then we can hit questions. So I moved from Tokyo to Osaki Shimojima Island, and that's just across the water from Van. And so I was born in Tokyo and moved to the UK at the age of 6 and studied documentary photography in London. And then in Tokyo, I was working in photography, writing, interpreting, English teaching, lots of different jobs. And then I met my wife, Mai, and we decided to move to, moved somewhere closer to nature. And so we actually went through the Hiroshima prefectural advice desk, and they introduced us to Osaki Shimojima, and that's when we moved in 2015. And my wife Mai became the Rural Revitalization Officer, which is called a Chiki Okoshi Kyoryokutai. And this is kind of like a system that you find all around Japan. It's basically a way of trying to get people to move to the countryside, and it gives you a basic income and accommodation for a maximum of 3 years. So that was very useful. Okay, and well, one thing I did do before I came to Japan, I did a project just visiting kind of organic farmers across America, and that was a big kind of influence. So it was meeting people like Thomas and Van, who are like leading really interesting, diverse lifestyles, and I was just curious if that was happening in Japan. And then after visiting lots of places, it became clear that there was a lot of potential in Japan. And so this is, I borrowed this map of Ciclo Noye, which is a really nice guest house in Imabari. But this kind of shows you where we are in relation to each other. So the Shimanami Kaido is a pretty famous route connecting Onomichi to Imabari and Shikoku in the south. And so Thomas is up towards the top in Kaishima. And then there's Van on Osaki Kamijima, and then just 15 minutes across the water, that's me on the Tobishima Kaido on Osaki Shimojima. It's a bit of a mouthful, but yeah. And so the Tobishima Kaido is basically it's 5 big islands connected by bridges to the mainland. And I live in a town called Mitarai on the eastern edge of Osaki Shimojima. And so Mitarai, this is what it kind of looks like. So it's a historic harbour town, and it's a historical preservation site. So there's a lot of, the whole town is full of kind of period buildings, and it's a really nice place to be. And so before we came, we had a lot of ideas about what we were going to do or how we're going to try and find ways to make a living. Luckily, we had Mai's job that gave us this kind of 3-year buffer period, I guess, that we could kind of think about different ways of making a living. We had a few ideas like English teaching, cycling tours, yeah, goat herding and things like that. I didn't expect there was going to be a high demand for photography or writing in this area. So the plan was just kind of like enjoy the slow life and yeah, live off the land and things like that. So what actually happened was, I think probably Van and Thomas probably would agree that the slow life is not a myth, but I think you've got to really schedule it into your daily routine. Otherwise, you can get very busy. And there's actually a lot of work around, especially in Western Japan. So I don't know why I was just thinking about the immediate area where I was living. But yeah, I mean, it's very easy to access a lot of different areas around Japan from this point. So there's actually a lot of content work and things like that. There's also a lot of community activities and lots of odd jobs inside the community. And we also started this little English tea shop where I am now called the Tea Cozy, and it's in Mitarai's old post office building. And we do have a little plot of land that we grow our own vegetables and a few lemon trees that, yeah, it looks like a jungle at the moment. So I have to kind of get back onto that. And so one thing I would say is that starting up new projects definitely costs a lot less in the countryside compared to if you tried to do the same thing in a more urban area. This is a shop. So this is the Tea Cozy, and yeah, mostly it's just DIY, and just we managed to make it into quite a nice area for quite a nice space for kind of the local community to kind of relax in, and also for tourists to enjoy. And also this we managed to buy a house and then just do it up. And yeah, I don't want Van to really judge me on this, but most of it's IKEA on the inside. But like projects like this definitely cost a lot less out here than if you tried to do the similar thing in the city. And yeah, as I said, like the slow life can sometimes be extremely busy, but just having this outside is it makes it all worth it. And yeah, so that's that. Okay, brilliant. So I think we're going to just head straight into the questions. And there's been quite a few. So first of all, let's go for a question from Amelie, directed to Thomas. Are you currently able to make a living from your farm? If yes, how long did it take until you were able to?
Yeah, I think right now, yeah, we're able to make a living from the farm. I was under in this graduate school, so I was receiving a scholarship until last year, and then after that, I decided to go more full time with the farm anyway. So yeah, I would say it's possible, but I still will take up part-time jobs if I deem them, you know, flexible in terms of my time and their time, and if the salary's decent, I would say. You have to really pick and choose, because I think, especially right now, there are many opportunities for part-time jobs if you have maybe the skills that your client desires. So, but it's definitely possible. But it also depends on what you farm and how you farm. And one recommendation I would say is The Urban Farmer by Curtis Stone, or Richard Perkins, or Jean Martin Fortier, in terms of their farming. And if you want me to write those, I can, in terms of being able to be a profitable market gardener or farmer. Look at those guys and those people, and they seem to be doing the right thing, and we're kind of following some of their practices to make it more sustainable.
Okay. Actually, there was another question for you, Thomas. It's a bit more specific. How did you install your solar panels, and how do you manage them?
Yeah, the solar panels, when I worked at the beer company, I installed my first solar panel system, which was a battery, one deep cycle battery, I think a 100 or 150 watt panel, and a solar charge controller. And that system was really cheap, and I lived off that system for a year. That was the only electricity that I had in this small cabin. And so we have that. We also have another similar one that we're getting ready to hook up to a water pump. And then we have our main one that's used as a hot water heater. And there's a guy on Yuge who built the boxes for these. He built the conversion boxes for these, which allows us to take the solar power, and when it gets activated by the sun, we can plug our hot water heater into it. And so there's no conversion and there's no batteries required. And so for about 2 kilowatts of power, we're using that to make our hot water, which reduces our cost of living. And then by adding on more panels to that system, we can start to use a lot of other appliances. So we can charge our laptops, and you can watch TV in the daytime, assuming you have enough sun, with enough panels connected in parallel together. But we're installing all of that ourselves, and we don't go through any kind of agency or company. You can, and I know that there's schemes in Japan that do that, but we're installing the panels ourselves.
Okay, great. Also, like Van, you've installed quite well. I mean, you've built your own house, so I guess you've probably done a few things regarding energy and.
Yes, well, I didn't show the photos, but we also have a solar installation actually, and as well as hot water panels. installation, and yeah, it's quite complicated. Actually, I do everything on the house, but I just left the electricity to my wife, so unfortunately she's not here. But yeah, the batteries cost the most money, and the management of the batteries is a great issue actually. So, but we don't have any air conditioning. So I built the house in such a way we don't have to use the air conditioning, and so we also don't have a freezer. We have a small fridge, but no freezer. So we have to make compromise, and everything that is taking too much power, we have to not use them.
And sorry, I'm going to be jumping around the questions a little bit just to keep the conversation flowing. So when you renovate or when you build your own house, are there laws that complicate the process? This is from Carly S.
Yeah. So there is a laws actually, but when it's in a rural areas, actually, there is the land specification is like Toshike Kakugai, which means there is no actual regulations. You can basically build everything you want. So you can build a traditional house as well as a modern house with all the normal regulation is as the same. So you have to check it at the city office. But if it's on the island, I don't know about Mukaishima. But I think, and also where Tom is living, I think it's a historical district, so they may have some laws about the external aspects, which are more local laws. But maybe where Thomas is living, I'm not sure. Maybe you are too far away from the city, so you might be in Toshike Kakugai, which means you can build everything you want actually on your land. You know about this, Thomas?
Yeah, we have some parts of the land. It's a farmland, and this becomes more difficult. But there used to be houses on the land that we purchased, and those houses no longer exist. So it gets taxed and designated as farmland still. And so one of the advantages to this is because it's in the old system where we're not converting farmland into housing. Where we kind of we can build, and there is a little bit more flexibility there. So when we've added on to this which is a citrus storage shed, if looking back at the picture of our farm, when we've added on to it, we've had an architect come in and help us work through the proper procedures with the government, but it's a little bit more flexible.
Yeah. So just have to be sure of where area you are living on, and depending on that, you can build like you want or not. So, but if it's in a very rural area, you probably have no problem of building what you want to do.
Yeah, so just following on from what Van said about my area, so because it's a historical preservation district, you can't actually alter the outside of the buildings. So that needs to go through like official processes, but then you're free to renovate the inside. And so that's the situation here. And it'll be the same there's a place called Takehara, which is also a historical preservation district, and also Tomonora, which is another district. Van, while you're still there, you've got a quick question regarding what did you use to seal the top of the earth floor you showed us?
Yes, I use that. I like those technical questions, so I'm getting crazy about this. So I used actually the linseed, the not boiled linseed oil, if that answers the question. And also after sealing the oil, but before putting the oil, you have to like polish really well the floor. You can also sand it using a sander and different grains. But I polished the soil with the trowel. Then the linseed oil, like as many layers as you can, it's going to absorb the oil, and you have to wait quite a long time, like at least 2 weeks or more, depending on where you are using it. And when it's dry, after I used the floor wax, like natural floor wax. It's enough, and it works as a wooden floor now. So if you have something heavy going on, it's going to leave a small marks, but it's not going. The earth is not going to blow away, and it's quite slick. It's also water resistant. It's pretty cool.
Brilliant. Okay. We've got, this is quite a really pertinent question from Amelie again. So she wants to know if it was easy to integrate in the local community and if you have tips to get to know people in rural areas. Thomas, like, I mean, I guess, well, in your presentation, you said there's not a lot of people doing organic farming. How did the local community take to your organic farm? Was it an easy process to kind of get accepted?
Yeah, I think in this community, the majority of people have quit farming and farming for sale. But where our farm was, it was a huge citrus orchard, and just behind us was a huge citrus orchard. So in terms of like wanting to be organic, or worrying about, you know, other farms or around us using sprays and using chemicals that might impact our farm, that wasn't the case on a large scale, but it on a smaller scale in terms of just, you know, using Roundup in the walkways around the pathways and things. And this is a practice that they've been doing because young people don't live here. It's difficult to pull the weeds by hand. So, you know, use conventional methods of weeds, you know, of getting rid of the weeds, you know, that became kind of a problem. So there's different ways to maybe handle that. I'd probably, when I first here, didn't handle it as well because maybe other things were brought up too about what we're doing. We were, you know, we make our own compost, we have chickens, we have sheep and goats, and people don't have animals in the countryside except for in pretty rare cases in Japan right now. So that becomes a more of a challenge, especially animals. Um, you know, that's something that people can't seem. I think they've seemed to accept it more, but also, you know, getting, you know, already knowing some people in the neighborhood too. I lived here once before when I was a teacher, so I already knew some of the neighbors. But if we were brand new and didn't know a single person, it would certainly be a greater challenge. Yeah. Don't forget to give presents to people when you first move in. You're supposed to do that.
Bribes.
Yeah.
That's great. And Van, like, I mean, if you built your own house, I mean, what did people think when you started building your own house?
Yes, well, people around here were very interested because I didn't start with a traditional style house. Actually, I started with like taking like branches in the trees, like it was more like a shelter. I don't know how to say that, but so what is this guy doing? It's like it was very interesting for them. So actually, it was a great way to get to know the people around the house, and well, we became friends. And depending on the areas, you might have people which will look at your project like with different angle. So for some people it will look very strange, for others it will be very interesting and they will really want to talk to you. So well, yeah, so great. I was fine on the island. Basically it's like they have been used to have many people to move in the island and then leave after, so they are quite used to weird people sometimes too. So I guess I was okay with that.
Okay, that's great. Sorry, there's like so many questions coming in.
Very interesting questions.
Okay, so let's go for, I think there was an Akia question about, there's quite a lot about visas. What kind of, I've actually got a Japanese passport because I'm half Japanese. How about you guys? Regarding the visa situation, I think there's quite a few questions about what kind of visas you first came to Japan. I guess what kind of visa types do you use now? Yeah.
I have a permanent residency now. Just applied
Oh,
from last
wow.
year and was accepted this year.
Wow.
And
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, yeah. You never know. I was married 5 or 6 years ago, um, and so I had a marriage visa for spousal
Yeah.
visa
Mm.
for several years and had to reapply several times and reapplied even before the permanent residency, and that's what I have currently. Um,
Yeah, I have the spouse visa. I had the student visa, and I have the spouse visa now. And I don't know how you applied, Thomas, but when I asked for more information about the applying for the permanent resident visa, it looks like it's very much more complicated now than it was like a few years back.
Yeah, I think in some cases it is. Having been to school here helped, I think. If you've graduated from a university within Japan, maybe that seems to help. They have a point system now, from what I understand.
Mm.
And yeah, these things help.
Yeah.
But I'm not exactly sure. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, because the spouse visa, you have to renew it like every 1 year or 3 years or 5 years, depending on your situation.
Right.
So yeah, it's not the ideal visa. Yeah.
Okay. And so there was a question for all three of us about how did you build your customers network? So a network of customers, how do you build that? Any thoughts regarding that? So Thomas, I guess did you start locally and then it grew from there?
Yeah, we absolutely, yeah, we had to start locally. And uh, I think through my wife and her network, there were a lot of good opportunities both in Hiroshima City, as well as she's from Saitama and she lived in Tokyo for some time, so there were occasions where we were sending produce there. But we have the local market, which is once a month. We actually have it tomorrow. It's a once every the first Sunday of every month, and we typically will go to that market about 5 or 6 times out of the year, and then we sell to local customers, either box sets or like not necessarily a community supported agriculture model, which is a box vegetable every single week. We find that people don't necessarily want to buy from the same place every week, but maybe once a month we have customers. And now online and through other platforms like Instagram or Facebook, we kind of have some outreach there. So that's other ways we've connected with people.
And how about you, Van?
Um,
Because I guess
Yeah.
your customers, you're going to have to invest a lot of time for each customer, I guess, in your line of work.
yeah. So at first I had like when I get to the island, I didn't have my plastering business, and well, when I get to know people and they started to see what I was doing, and one day somebody like asked me to do something at her house, and it started like this. So after I could show what I did in this house, and after other people asked me, and it becomes like this. So um, yeah, you just need an occasion to show what you can do somehow, and yeah, it starts like this, and yeah.
In my case, I just basically took a portfolio around and started knocking on doors. But I think what I noticed was compared to somewhere like Tokyo, I guess like the kind of degrees of separation are a lot less out here. So it's very quick to connect to other people that you didn't know you would necessarily connect to at the beginning. And people are very quick to recommend you to other people as well, I think. So there's a lot of, there's more relationships that are built like that, I think. I've noticed there's quite a lot of questions regarding buying large tracts of land and buying property and finding property. So maybe we can just talk about that. So yeah, first of all, so Van, then Thomas. Okay, how did you connect with the place that you're living in now?
This was the first place I rented. It was an introduction from our neighbor, but we had to we met the original landowner, and in order to buy farmland in Japan, you need to have a farmer's license. And in order to have a farmer's license, you have to prove you are renting or managing a certain amount of property, and that you're selling or trying to intentionally sell your produce. Because what's happening right now is people are buying farmland and say they're going to farm, and then they build a house there and then they stop farming. And the government doesn't necessarily want people to do that as much. They want to maintain and keep the farmland. But we were already renting several plots around Makaishima, 3 or 4 plots at one point. But at this point, we've returned all of those. But we still have the farmer's license, and we have enough in terms of plots in this area where we don't need to rent those other places, especially the way that we're farming in this no-till, no tractor, no tillage style farming. But it's difficult to buy farmland if you're not a licensed farmer. Yeah, that's what I'll say.
And how would you, what would you give any advice to anyone who wants to start farming but maybe doesn't have the kind of connections in the area?
Well, I know that the MAF, the Ministry of Agriculture, Fishery and Forestry Department, through Japan is, if you're under a certain age, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but they offer a lot of opportunities and grants to get people started. So that might be one route to go, although paperwork and the bureaucracy behind that can probably be pretty intense. And you'll have to do things that maybe you don't necessarily want to do in the beginning, like grow, just onions or something like this. But yeah, I think you can look at other places and be pretty flexible. As mentioned in the presentation, there's so much abandoned farmland, so there's a lot of opportunities there in this region. And then how you can tie up houses, maybe further inland is one place I would suggest. You have a lot more space and there's a lot more farming, but it doesn't have some of the other advantages, like being close to trains or, the view of the sea. I mean, these are some of the greater points too to living in these places that we've mentioned. So.
And Van, how did you come to be on your plot of land? Was it through
the place I am now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was doing a pizza oven workshop. So, and then I meet some some people who are my actual neighbors, and I just ask them, like, just ask around you that, do you have any place, if I can build some house, and oh yeah, maybe you can just try the place just right next to us, and there is a place here. It's a bit terrible shape, but maybe you can do something about this, and then I choose this place.
Yeah, so in my case, so the first 3 years we were living in accommodation provided by my wife's job. So that kind of gave us like a nice period of time to kind of look for other places. But yeah, so on this island we've created this group called Tobishima Life, which is like trying to help people relocate to the Tobishima Kaido Islands. And the biggest, well, there's two big kind of challenges to that, and one's obviously about work, trying to find available work for people who want to relocate, and also the other one is finding property. And at the moment there's about 40% of the houses on the Tobishima Kaido are empty, but it's very rare. Some of them go on to this thing called the Akia Bank, but a lot of them don't really surface because I think a lot of people are not keen on either renting or selling their property, even if they're not using it. So we've been trying to kind of talk to the local community and get them to open up especially if these properties are going to waste. But I think that's probably similar. Is that similar? Is that a similar situation around Makaishima and Osaki Kamijima with the abandoned properties?
Yeah, Mukaishima seems to be filling up. Like, I mean, yeah, it doesn't seem like there are very many abandoned properties, and some of the ones that are abandoned are beyond repair in many cases. Um, but where we were living, kind of in a similar situation, I think, Tom, is that we were living at a property my wife bought about 10 years ago first, before we moved on to the farm and started living here full time. And that really gave us an idea to really decide whether we're going to move there or not. But she had a loan from a bank to buy an older Japanese house, and we lived there, but we really wanted to be closer and really on the farm. And you know, we thought about it, and we had a lot of discussions about how to make that work. But it seems, yeah, the like Ninki, you know, it's like Tachibana, the region just where we were living, has become, you know, really popular, and now secondary homes are being built up around this area too. So it may be more difficult to find places. But in Onomichi, in the town, there's an Akia bank, I believe. But we have lots of friends come in, and they say that that's also filling up as well. So sometimes going further inland, yeah, it seems to be one of the better options.
I mean, Osaki Kamijima has quite a lot of in-migrants as well, like people.
Yeah. The island is also kind of filling up too, quite fast too. There is a few facilities for people who want to migrate to the island too, which are owned by the town. And there is also like a Akia bank, so you can check online to see there is whether it's in maybe in Mukajima and where Tom is living too, this kind of organization. So you can look out for free houses sometimes houses very cheap, and yeah, it's filling up, yeah, quite nicely. More and more people look like they want to go in the rural areas. Yeah.
Sorry to cut in. Can I extend the time for maybe 30 minutes or?
Okay, maybe I will become dark because I don't have light here, but yeah.
Oh, is it okay, Thomas and Tom? Okay.
Yeah, that should be okay.
Okay, thank you. じゃあ、お願いします。
Okay. Yeah, we've got quite a few questions.
Before we extend, can I do the poll this again?
Right, okay. Yep, so there's a poll that probably just came up on your screen. If you didn't answer it at the beginning, if you could take a few minutes to just do that now. I think it's just like 3 questions. While we scroll through all the questions and try and find a... Okay. Okay. So should we just continue a little bit longer? So there was a question somewhere, I've kind of lost it, but it was about, I guess, kind of combining different types of work and combining different incomes. So there's a concept in Japan called Han no Han X, which is like half farming, half something, as like a model for living in the countryside. What are your thoughts about that? Thomas, should we go with you first?
Yeah, maybe this idea of what hyakusho, right? Like 100 things doing person, you know, or whatever. I don't know. That seems to be maybe even more important, is just to be able to do a lot of different things, different tasks, both on and off the farm, and have different opportunities. Yeah, and be open to learning, what comes up. I don't think it's, I don't, I'm probably going further away from considering myself half farming, and because I feel like I'm farming pretty much full time at this point. But within farming, within the hats that you wear as a farmer, there's so many things you end up doing. And so maybe you mentioned or in your presentation, like wild boars, and hunting, and so we process like wild boar here at our farm, not for sale but for our own meat consumption. I didn't know how to do that at all before I came to Japan. I didn't grow up in a place where I was hunting, but it's like it's an integral part of living in the countryside for us at this point. So having like opening up your skills and opening up your mind to new opportunities is really important, to that flexibility. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, I think a lot of people probably don't realize that there are tons of wild boar running around on these islands. And no one seems to like eating wild boar meat.
Yeah, you gotta like low and slow. I think we have this kind of saying like in Georgia or Texas, in terms of how you cook it. Yeah, low heat and slowly, like 8 hours, and yeah, you get really nice meat.
It's delicious. Yeah. I don't know. And Van, so I mean, in your presentation, you were saying that you were doing you're kind of juggling lots of different jobs.
Yeah.
How does that work out? Is that something that's easy?
Yes. So the nice thing about having your own business is that you can choose when you want to work and when you don't want to work, and and sometimes all the work arrives in 1 week. So and I don't know. I disappeared. My video is not here anymore. Maybe I'm too dark.
Well, we can still hear you. So.
Okay. So maybe if I put the light like this. Oh yeah. Okay. So sorry, what was the question?
Is it easy to be able to kind of juggle?
Oh yeah. So so if it's your personal business, you can manage. Sometimes you have hard time, but it's the nice thing. You have to be self-employed. Yeah, that's what I would recommend strongly if you want to live in a rural area.
And also, there's a question: how would you recommend to learn the basics about farming while living in an urban area? So I guess this is kind of like someone who is interested in moving to the countryside, but maybe not quite yet. They want to be ready when they do.
Yeah, I mean, try to find. I think even in certain parts of Japan, even in the urban areas, there are community plots you can become involved with. Maybe if you have a time to take a break, do woofing, go work on an organic farm, or not even an organic farm, work on any kind of farm and get some experience. I probably learned more about farming, not necessarily from my neighbors, although I do have a few that I can rely on to give me some good advice. But in terms of the type of farming I'm currently doing, either reading about it, or YouTube is a great resource for learning anything, I guess, at this point. So you can really look at that. And I can write that in the chat. I think some of the farmers that I might recommend, and as well as podcast too. Podcasts are another great resource for wanting to learn any topic in depth. Yeah.
Van, how about you with your profession? How did you get into that?
So well, I was in a university, and I had this project outside. Well, it was a field work actually. My research was about how the elderly people are trying to revitalize their community, and I had this weird idea of building an earthbag house. So it's kind of a weird building, but using like sustainable material to see, like, it's kind of original, just to see how people are going to gather around it. And when I was building this building, actually, the older people didn't really participate to it. It was more people from all around the city, from different areas. And I met also a plasterer who passed by, and he just asked me like, "What are you doing here?" And this is like I entered into this world like this. Actually, it's really by doing something you just end up to meet some people who are changing your life somehow. So yeah.
And actually, just quickly, there's a question directly for Van. So are you doing traditional plastering jobs for new builds, or is your work mainly restoration and repairs?
Yeah, I do both. I prefer renovation, but for new buildings, if it's like modern buildings, I usually refuse them because I don't like this kind of buildings. And so I do, however, like new traditional buildings. And also I'm trying to now, I have a project of making a building using like more renewable material, like such as straw bale house, you know, these kind of buildings. And I would like to make it a trend in the future in Japan. Yeah.
And do you do workshops and things like that?
I do workshops, yes, and many different kind of workshops. So, and mostly it's not I don't take money for the workshops. So I have the owner of the building I'm renovating to organize the workshop. So all the participants can have a small approach to how it is to plaster an old house, for example, or testing different kind of finishes. Yeah.
So just question for Thomas. Well, for example, if someone's really interested in moving to the countryside, leading a lifestyle that's similar to yours, what would you recommend to be like those kind of first steps that they should take? I mean, I guess visit the area is probably the first step, but
Right. Yeah, I would, yeah, visit the area. I mean, and always see if there's other opportunities just outside of, if it is farming and you want to make a living at farming, that it's always good to start, and then have other options. I think I've mentioned in some of these comments that yeah, I started and had a scholarship, or I was working part-time somewhere else too while starting the farm initially before I started the graduate school program. So, you know, be flexible when you can, and maybe try to find a niche, in that community. If it's a crop, for example, and you notice that at the market not many people are growing, X and Y, then maybe look at that and look how you can source seeds, or how you can be one of the main producers of that. We produce maybe 50 to 60 varieties, like vegetables, but then including the variety, so maybe 2 or 3 types of tomatoes or 2 or 3 types of eggplants, maybe more now. But but our main source of income from the farming isn't going to be potatoes or carrots, because it's just done on such a big scale. We're a really small farm. So you really figure out your niche, and then figure out what's working in your climate and what works in your area, and that takes seasons, I think, to figure out. um so
and so there's a question here about like how access to hospitals, schools, supermarkets, general infrastructure in the countryside out here. I mean, I guess my situation is probably similar to Thomas, that we're connected to the mainland by bridges. So any kind of like big shops, we can just cross over to the mainland and do big shopping trips out there. Van, you're living on an island that's not connected by bridges. How does it work over there on Osaki Kamijima?
Yes, so it is sometimes very inconvenient to not have a bridge. However, there is almost everything on the island. So the only thing we don't have on the island would be maybe a pet healer. No, how to say, a vet, and also maybe for the kids, when you want to to deliver the kid. This is the only two difficulties we have on the island. There is everything else. So not really difficult actually. And it's quite close to the airport. So when you want to go back to your country, this is very convenient part. Yeah.
Sorry. And Thomas, there's been a few questions about farming, like why is organic farming so unpopular in Japan? And also I think there was a question regarding livestock. Why is livestock farming so unpopular in Japan?
Well, I think in many ways, you know, I think at the turn, or I guess the middle of the century, 1950, 1960, it really went into the conventional model of agriculture. You know, you have the concept, or you have the vocabulary word niwatori, garden bird, right? You know, it's a bird that exists in your garden, and they've kind of removed that completely, and it's too bad because there's so many functions that the chicken is now providing, for being around the house. They love to eat mukade, but everybody, which ties into maybe conventional solutions and why organic farming is so reduced. You know, there's conventional solutions, so it's easy to use the herbicides or pesticides, you know, to reduce the amount of work or reduce the amount of labor, because maybe that would, you know, that would be another issue in the farm. If you don't have to use labor, you can just spray, or you can use some other means. So that those are some of the other issues. And then I guess just the overall look, you know, images of what a vegetable is supposed to look like. Since the 1920s, I think JA has played a major role in this. And not to say anything bad about the JA, the Japan Agricultural Cooperative, but if you look at their history, they started out as one of the major importers and exporters of Japanese agricultural chemicals. So that combination, and they were the major suppliers to the farmers. So, and they've kind of been the main background. So maybe that would be one reason why organic farming or organic production is reduced down. And also having animals is tough. I mean, we can't leave the farm most of the time. So you know, somebody has to be here. We have 4 sheep now, and we have 1 goat and several types of chickens and a few ducks. So we really need to be here almost all the time. So that makes a big challenge. Means you need to be committed, I guess, to what you're doing because you have an animal. But it's just like having a dog or a cat too, you know, the same kind of commitment lies within.
Probably clarify mukade for anyone who doesn't know. It's like one of those
Centipede, yeah, a pretty nasty centipede, yeah, and they're pretty scary. Yeah, they're pretty scary, but chickens eat them right up, which is really pretty amazing. So, you know, that people, I think I had seen or read that Japanese people used to keep the chickens under the house, you know, and that's where most of the bugs live. There was a little storage space underneath your house, and
Yeah.
your chicken stayed there. And yeah,
Problem is if you have too many chicken, the poo will make the small mice to come to. So after you need a cat, and
yeah, and then you have an ecosystem. So
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So I was looking. I think Van, you just answered the question from Carly, but I guess so. Like we've kind of started our own things in the countryside, but for example, if somebody just wants to move to the countryside just to enjoy the lifestyle, but maybe for work they want to just get employment locally, or
Yeah.
how realistic is that?
Well, I think it depends. First, you need some. It's easier to start if you already know somebody on the island or in the place you want to live. If you, so I suggest that you ask the people around you who knows Japan, or they may have relatives who can help you and guide you at the beginning. and then lead you to even a small job like teaching like a few English lessons a week. It start like this. You will ask with your student, and they will lead you to other job opportunities. It will go on like this until you find a more permanent activity, for example. Yeah. Or you can go as well like doing small jobs, many different kind of small jobs. It's very easy in Japan to have many jobs actually. This is the nice part maybe of working in Japan. Yeah, it's not difficult to find a job. Sorry, I'm becoming really scary now.
So yeah,
Yeah,
So-
I agree with Van on that. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities, and so if you want to have a job that's not, farming or, building or opening up your own shop, I think there are opportunities, and I think there will continue to be more opportunities, and especially with what we can do online and at home. I mean, we have access to the internet, and so yeah, it's pretty great.
and I think it all, like from what you guys just said, and what we talked about with the property as well. I mean, it's all about kind of connecting with people on the ground, and then just kind of expanding your network. And then they'll know people who might know someone, or someone will know someone who wants to sell a piece of land or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's probably, I don't know, it's probably quite hard to do everything remote, like unless you've actually visited the place and made those connections. Okay. Shall we do a couple more questions and then wrap it up? And then if we haven't got
answer some questions by writing or.
Okay. I don't know. Interesting. Okay, so the most recent question, is there any form of beekeeping community or association in Hiroshima? It's quite specific. I don't know if I can answer that.
I don't think there's any beekeeping association. I know that there is a national association in Japan. There's one guy keeping bees on the island here. He sells his honey at a small shop, and he also runs like a small liquor shop and dry cleaning service. So he's kind of doing a lot of different things. He's a Japanese guy. And near us, we had one guy keeping a hive really close, but it looked like he was taking it down today for whatever reason. So but that's a new opportunity, I think, or a growing opportunity and a growing need. So
I think there's a French beekeeper down in Ormishima. No, yeah. Maybe Ormishima. And there's beekeepers.
Oh yeah, I heard about this guy. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely becoming popular, I think. Okay. Okay. So how do you, okay, I think this isn't exactly one of the questions, but since you guys have moved to the islands, have you seen a change in the way that the kind of Japanese countryside is developing, or is it getting better, or is it getting what are the trends? I mean, I don't know, just going off personal experience, here the population is continuing to decrease, but then we are getting more interest in younger people who are wanting to move back. But then it's just kind of, it's going to be the problem of whether things are going to decrease before if we can actually save it before the kind of infrastructure kind of starts to break down and things like that. But Makaishima seems really popular at the moment, so I guess you're not really seeing those issues.
I think maybe Mukaishima in the three of us might be the more convenient because it's close to Onomichi. And Mitarai and Osaki Kamijima, they have their own, how to say, independency, I would say autonomy maybe, yeah. But there is no convenience store close by or like more regular stuff. So yeah,
But Kamijima seems to be doing pretty well in terms of people
yeah.
relocating to the area.
Yeah, supermarkets and home center and stuff like this. Yeah, it's everything's here.
And is there um, a community of kind of foreign people?
Yeah, there is a new foreigner communities which came along with the building of the new school, the Eiichi Gakuen. There is many teachers actually in this school, and the number is going to grow because there is more and more students coming to this school. It's a whole English school, so.
And how about in Mukaishima? Do you have a kind of community of?
Not necessarily in Mukaishima, but certainly maybe in Onomichi, I would say. And yeah, and it's, the Board of Education is there, so you have like new jets coming in. And then you also have the shipbuilding industries, which you have people coming from Asia mostly to work. So yeah, you have this kind of mix of foreign community. And then you have people who've recently moved here because their wife's Japanese and was from the area, or the husband's Japanese and the wife wants to live here too. So you have that mix in Onomichi, but Onomichi also has a lot of what Japan calls I turn, U turn, when and eyes don't turn, but people who've left this city and gone to these areas, and people who are living here when they were young and then they've returned, so they're a U-turn. So you have that more and more frequently in Onomichi and in Mukaishima. So we have I mentioned this in the comments. We have a big community of new residents who are new to this area, especially when we go to these markets or we go to the events. And that's been really a great thing. So it's a good intermingling of people who are from the outside, not just foreigners. So I really enjoy that.
And just one last question from me. So how difficult would it be for someone who doesn't speak Japanese to move to the Japanese countryside, or is it not such a big problem? And do you want to go for that?
Oh, yeah, sorry. It's getting darker and darker here.
Okay. So how do you think if someone doesn't speak a lot of Japanese?
Yes. So I would like to help these kind of people to get around. Actually, the problem is I don't know if themselves, if they have no help, like a Japanese friend or somebody who can help them to guide them at the beginning. It might get difficult, frankly. However, I guess the three of us are like foreigners who are already in I would say in position, like might be more able to help you. And yeah, the issue is mostly, I would say, the visa first. Then you need a little bit savings for beginning, like for the at least half a year, and then after you can manage probably. But yeah.
And what do you think, Thomas?
Yeah, I think the language would be really a big challenge. I mean, just not only getting around, but just the mental, like the day-to-day stuff, like not being able to understand exactly what somebody has just said, or which could lead to later miscommunications, like you were supposed to go somewhere and you didn't go somewhere, or you were supposed to not do something and you did something, like these kind of things, they're real.
Even if you speak Japanese, I still do that.
yeah, there's that. But it certainly helps. But I think my friends who are now, two of them don't have as much experience that from in Japanese. They they've been taking free courses or reduced cost courses through the city government in Onomichi, and those are once a week courses, and it's like 100 yen or 200 yen. And then I think one of my friends has even taken a business course that's a free course, that's a 3 or 4 hour course. And yeah, there's a lot of those opportunities that it's like they don't pay you to go there, but there's a lot of opportunities to learn the language. And the governments of Japan recognize that they need more people living here, and they want Japanese people to integrate with foreigners as well. And so learning the language is a huge obstacle, but it's a huge opportunity.
Okay, I think yeah, we didn't get to all the questions, but I think we probably better call it a day now. Because there's been so much interest in this webinar, I think the potential for part 2 is going to be quite high. So please keep a lookout for that in the near future. So I'm going to finish off by talking about Hiroshima Prefectural. あれなんか窓口のビデオ。
窓口、
Okay, I'm full dark
すいませ
now.
ん。ちょっとあれなんで、パスしてもらって大丈夫です。すいません。今パネリストにしました。はい、大丈夫です。はい、すいません。
Okay, so yeah, I was going to just mention the advice office. So it's in Yurakucho. For people who are interested, it's in Yurakucho in Tokyo, and you can actually.
Oh, she's here. トモさん。
はい、こんにちは。広島暮らしサポートセンターの森上です。私は東京有楽町の、東京交通会館にあります、ふるさと回帰支援センターで、広島県への移住の相談員をしています。事前予約の方をお願いしてるんですが、対面とかオンラインでの面談、電話、メールでのご相談をお受けしています。広島への移住にご興味がある方は、さまざまなサポートをしていますので、お気軽にご相談ください。楽しみに待ってます。
Okay, thank you. So that's the place to go if you're looking for information about moving to Hiroshima or any of the places that we mentioned today. And we'll try to get to the rest of the questions on a later date. But I'd just like to say thank you to Thomas and Van for participating today in this great talk. And thank you for all of you for taking the time out to join us today. And I think you probably have a questionnaire sent to you. And so if you can take a few minutes to complete that, that would be great as well. Okay, so hopefully see you again. Keep your eyes on the Hirobiro site for future events, and yeah, hope to see you in Hiroshima sometime soon.
Yeah, come visit us.
Come visit. Yeah, exactly. Come visit us, and we can show you around. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I make the bye-bye with the raised hand.
Okay. Bye, guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, guys.
はい。
ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございます。